You are watching EASD TV and we're delighted to see you back again. My name's Vivian Parry and I have with me two of, I think, the most important people at EASD 2022. I hope that by the end of this you'll agree with me. Renza Scibilia and Bastian Hauck of dedoc. And just for those that don't know what dedoc is, and jolly well ought to know by now, tell us what dedoc is.
dedoc is a truly international community of diabetes advocates, and the main thing we do here at EASD is we bring these diabetes advocates from across the globe to EASD. And the one thing that is special about it is that a conference like this is not meant for that. It is meant for HCPs and industry and research, but we think people living with diabetes, the lived experience, needs a seat at the table. We need to be here, and this is what we do.
So they not only need to see a seat at the table, but they need to be influential in decision making. Now this year, for the very first time, dedoc have had a symposium of their very own. So that seems like a bit of a triumph in itself, but tell me about the content of the symposium.
Well, the first time, circling back, the first time we came to EASD was 7 years ago. We had our first little doc day outside of EASD, we weren't in, and now having our first symposium is just major. Giving the dedoc voices, as we call them, our scholars, a voice at an official symposium that is part of the scientific program is great. What they were talking about is we asked 4 dedoc voices to talk about what kind of peer support, online peer support models had been adopted, developed during COVID, because things have changed dramatically over the last 2.5 years. Now, for us, it was kind of easy to adapt because peer support has always been online to some degree. But we had Jeff Hitchcock there from Children with Diabetes, and he talked about how they transformed the whole program into something virtual when they couldn't meet in Florida to run Disney World, right? And we had Saleh Hendricks from South Africa talk about how during COVID he reached out as a diabetic amputee to build a community through Instagram. We had Tom Dean from the UK who talked about a diabetes chat, a spoken chat on Twitter that he started just half a year ago, and that has grown tremendously. And Andrea Limburg from France, who was just giving a general overview of how peer support in the online world has adapted to lockdown, basically.
And Renzi, all those kind of initiatives that happened during COVID, these are not going to go away, are they?
No, they're not. And I think one of the things that was touched on was that in a lot of ways, actually, we were actually really well placed when COVID struck because so much of what we did was already online. So we had, in a lot of ways, already things in place to make sure that we stayed connected. So we could see that there were all these moves to ensure that people with diabetes remained connected to our healthcare professionals, absolutely critical. But we were really concerned about staying connected for support, and that's what happened, and it's just going to keep growing and growing. These opportunities, we've seen just how far-reaching that they can be, and new things started and things were pivoted and adapted, and it's just wonderful to see growing communities of people leaning on each other for peer support, for peer learning, for laughing, for crying, for celebrating diabetes when you want to, for being frustrated about it as well, but that you can only get that from your peers with diabetes.
And it's interesting because what you get from professionals sometimes is, people don't want to use social media, they don't understand how to use technology. And actually think it's not just 25-year-olds who are on social media. It's that time has kind of moved on. Your granny's on social media. Not all grannies, but quite a lot of them.
Yeah. True. It's not just 25-year-olds. That ship sailed a long time for me, and I am very present online in the diabetes community. I think we need to acknowledge, absolutely, it's not for everybody. It's not for every 25-year-old, but it is a way to connect with people. And I think you're right, though. There are so many assumptions and there's so much bias that everybody makes, not just health professionals, about who will and won't like or want to connect with people in a certain way. But I think the important thing is for everybody to be aware of what is out there. And then, people with diabetes are pretty smart. They'll work out what it is and where they fit and what it is that they want to do. And I think that's one of the things that we were able to highlight at the symposium was it's not all the same, it can be quite different, but find the way in that you like and find the community that you are really keen to engage with.
Now, we were chatting a bit before about the way that patients or people living with diabetes are viewed, and quite often they're invited to this kind of event, but they're almost put in a petting zoo somewhere at the back. There are the patients, aren't they sweet? But actually, this is very different in EASD, isn't it?
Well, it is very different, definitely, for the dedoc Voices program, because what is very important to us is that it remains completely independent. So while we have corporate partners that fund the program,
and that's actually been very important in getting people over here, hasn't it?
Well, I mean, we're flying 25 people from all over the world to EASD. We have to fund their flights, their hotels, their food. We have to fund the program itself. So yes, there is money involved. But what is really important is that through dedoc and through the model we have created, there is like a firewall, basically, between the partners that fund the program, and we are very thankful for them, and the individuals that we bring here, so that there is a complete transparency on the one hand, but also a complete independence of that patient voice, and that they're not this petting zoo and everybody's a bit careful about what can I say or write so that I can get invited again next year. No, this is how it used to be a couple of years down the road back. There was a company inviting diabetes bloggers, and they would see, does he or she have enough Facebook likes, then that's worth bringing on. We look for very different criteria, and we make sure that the people we bring are free to speak their minds, to ask the questions they want, get up in a scientific symposium, an industry symposium, a session, say what they really feel, what really matters to them. This is what Chantal, the Senior Vice President of EASD, encouraged us to do in her opening speech. She said, ask the questions that really matter to you and be as critical as you want. And I think that's the beauty of the dedoc Voices program, that it allows that.
What I say to that is, go Chantal.
Yeah, she's amazing.
She really is, yeah.
So that's been very important. So we've talked a bit about COVID and the way that things have changed because of COVID, but we last met probably 2 years ago when there was the last meeting. Where do you think dedoc is heading now, and where is the patient movement? How has it changed beyond the COVID impositions? How has it changed in the last 2 years?
Well, it's COVID has enabled us to reach out so much wider to all these countries around the world. Without COVID, we wouldn't have done that, because Doc Day before COVID was something where we worked with the people already there, and it was kind of limited to mostly European voices. Through going virtual, we reached out much broader. We now have a network of 150 to 200 alumni. We gave out 150 some scholarships this year alone. It's hopefully going to stay the same in the next years. So the alumni pool is growing every year. And we just had our 10-year anniversary celebration. My team actually set up a birthday party for dedoc, and I had no clue they were doing that, and I was completely blown away. But I think when I was standing there watching the celebrations, and they did a video with everybody congratulating, Chantal was singing Happy Birthday Dedoc. I was thinking it's kind of also at a point now where this baby has grown and it's big enough to fly, so the dedoc program will continue and the dedoc Voices program will continue no matter what happens. So a couple of years down the road, I hope that it will become, maybe even without us having to facilitate that, the new normal that yes, diabetes advocates, the patient voice, the lived experience voice is here, and maybe it won't even need our program anymore. That would be fantastic.
Renza, you've got a big audience of diabetologists. I hope you're all watching this. Big audience of diabetologists. What are the, say, 3 key messages that people living with diabetes would like to get across to the diabetes professional community?
Wow, that's such a wonderful question. And I don't in any way profess to speak for the global diabetes community, but we do see themes that come through. And some of those themes are around the way that people with diabetes want to be treated, and that is with respect and for judgment and for stigma to be checked at the door. No one asks to get any sort of diabetes, and people with diabetes deserve to be treated in a way that is, wonderfully respectful and, a real understanding, I guess, for that basis of, people with diabetes. It's a hard gig doing diabetes, and we need support. And I think also to really encourage health professionals to ask a very simple question, and that is, how are you? And it's interesting because a lot of health professionals say, I do ask that, but quite often it's a question that's asked as somebody is leaving. So are you good? As the door's being opened and someone's being escorted out. I know that health professionals have a list of things that they want to cover in an appointment, in a consultation, but actually if that's not what's important to me...
So it's not just about the numbers.
It's never about the numbers.
There's often a focus on the numbers.
It's never about the numbers.
There's so much more.
Yeah, it's never about the numbers. And I think the final thing that, one of the what we live by is nothing about us without us. If you're talking diabetes at any level, at a policy level, at a strategy level, at a conference, at a hospital level about programs, please put people with diabetes in the room in a position to influence, because really this is about us. So the idea that a conference is built for health professionals and people with diabetes are infiltrating it, we've got to move on from that. If you're talking diabetes, we have to be there. And I think that that's something that the dedoc Voices program does so beautifully, is it makes sure that we have a seat at the table. We're very, very present. You can't walk around without seeing us. You can't look on Twitter without seeing us. And it's exactly where we belong.
And involving and engaging and working with people living with diabetes actually has a hugely beneficial effect for professionals. I mean, they often see patient involvement as a kind of, this is going to take a lot of my time. But actually, we already know that clinical trials are better for patient involvement. And there are so many other areas, areas of research, all sorts. Bastian, what would your message to the professionals?
I think we had a really interesting outgoing question at the symposium the other day, where it came from the auditorium. They asked, how do we reach the healthcare professionals that are not yet supportive of peer support, that do not yet sit here in the room? Because we're kind of always talking to the ones already converted, right? When we're at the dedoc symposium, the healthcare professionals there are the ones that are interested and they've already understood. The question came from the crowd, how do we reach out to healthcare professionals that don't believe in peer support yet? And it's kind of hard, because I think we have to make it very, very easy. We can't come and say, if you don't know peer support yet, learn all the different forms there are, and you have to know where to point people to, etc. So when the question came to me, and I think you asked it as a moderator then, what would you like a healthcare professional to say when a patient comes in and says, I kind of heard there's online peer support? The most important answer and the easiest thing I would like any doctor, any healthcare professional to say when somebody comes from the patient side with that question is, yes. Yes, do it. I don't know anything about it, maybe. I don't know where to find those groups, but yes, I know there's peer support, and I think you should, and I quoted you there, find your tribe, love them hard. Go out there, do it. It's going to be helpful. And we all believe in that.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. It's always such a pleasure talking to you. And dedoc, a force, a really important force to be reckoned with, bringing their lived experience to the world of diabetes. Thank you so much for listening to this, and do hope that you take some of that that's been said today away with you. Bye for now.